All right. Welcome to another edition of Shabbat Lounge. This is Matt.
And Jake here.
We're coming to you with a very special guest. We're super excited about this. So, Jake, tell us who do we have on today?
We have Josh Myers with us, and he is from The Straight and Narrow. And Josh, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Great. Thank you. Thank you guys for having me on. This is great. Yes, I'm Joshua Myers. I have a comic online that's that I say it's about the Bible and what it says. I've been doing it for almost 3 years now. It'll be 3 years in May. But yeah, I do 3 times a week. I do comics that try to show what's happening in the Bible and also some misconceptions of what I used to have whenever I was in my church life. I try to explain some of that in there as well.
Yeah, and so Josh he's a husband and father of 4 children, correct? And 2 of those children are identical twins, and
yes.
and deaf. You're telling us.
Yes, yeah, we got a deaf diagnosis when they were about 2, almost 3 years old, and yeah, it's been a journey.
Yeah, that sounds like it could be a challenge.
Yeah, it was definitely a learning curve for us.
Right. And so you spent most of your time working a career in IT, right? And then with security analysis also. Why don't you tell us what that's about?
Yeah, so I kind of stumbled into the IT field. I didn't have any formal training there, but that's where the Father put me, and I became an engineer in Linux and virtualization, and then I moved on into security analysis, and that's the security analysis part. I like bringing that up because that's kind of where I get how I dig into the Bible. I do it in kind of an analytical mindset because of doing that work. So
yeah, and if everyone would go back to where Matt and I first started podcasting together, you'll see in my introduction that I'm very analytically minded also, and that's kind of how I looked at it as well. So I think we kind of meet eye to eye on that one. And so now you're a stay-at-home dad, and you do various freelance jobs as well as creating the biblically based comics, right?
That is correct. Yes. Yeah. So right now, one of the freelance things I do is I maintain a website for an online ministry and help them get their YouTube videos going and run their website. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. So tell us a little bit about how we can find you. If you're watching this in YouTube, you're going to see this. But if you're listening to this audio, what's the best way to find and pull up your information?
Yeah, so everything I have is at a Linktree type site called Beacons. It's beacons.ai, and that's then /JNMYERS. I don't know if I need to do military. I don't know the military ones, but like Joshua Nancy.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
you're probably fine.
Yeah.
So, and let me ask you this: if they Google something, what if they can't remember all of that? What could they Google to pull you up?
So, Googling, I would say the straight plus narrow, and the plus sign as in not plus as in writing out plus, but the plus sign.
Right.
Because everywhere I put my stuff, that's how I stylize it. So.
Okay. So just remember, if all you heard here was, if you can just remember straight, the plus sign, and narrow, you can find him.
Yep.
So in multiple places. So we wanted to, and so if you're not looking at this on YouTube, you won't see his face. But so he is in a platform you may know, and that's TikTok. So what exactly do you do in TikTok?
So I joined TikTok honestly just to promote the comics. I thought some of my comics I have a little bit of commentary with, and I thought, hey, TikTok is a growing platform, and so I thought, hey, I'll join it and I'll just talk about my comics a little bit, and that's turned into now I kind of joined the whole community of people that are walking this way and answering questions and kind of defending the faith, if you will.
Yeah, isn't it amazing? how much of a following there is, and it's also amazing how much negativity you can find on TikTok.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of people that get fired up. So yeah, we've ran into that a little bit, and you want to fight, but I've also noticed, sometimes it's just better. I've told several people, hey, I'd love to have a conversation with you if you want to call me or something. If you private message me, I'll give you my phone number. Let's talk, and I'll explain a little bit more. I can't explain this in these limited characters that I have in this app. It's just not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah, the comment section is very small. And I mean, even in videos, you really can't have a full conversation in just, 3 minutes at the max.
Right.
Mm-hmm. No, you get and you get keyboard warriors that like to find people and just pick fights with. And I'm just like, who has time for that anyway? So
Yeah.
I don't have time to go look at people I disagree with and say stuff. I mean, it's just, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that actually kind of makes it perfect. That time limit makes it perfect to put your comics in, because it's from what I'm seeing and what your comics are, they're just short little blurbs that you can read and get the picture pretty quickly.
Yeah, and that's how they initially started. It was kind of a meme-ish type thing. I got the idea. The father gave it to me. I was driving down the road one day, and he just kind of gave me this like 5-panel thing of trying to explain the reason why we're walking the way we're walking now, and in a simplified way. And that's one thing I always say about my comics are stick figures. This is how I draw stick figures. Except they've kind of grown. If you look at those first ones, they're definitely at that point now. They're a little bit better. They have clothes and beards and stuff. But yeah, it's kind of supposed to be meme-ish, if you will. It's a one panel. Let's look at it and move on.
Yeah, I really like the style of the comics too. It's because I mean, I'm not a very artistic. I'm a little artistic, but my brother more has most of that. But yeah, so when you try to draw something and make it your own, I like the no face situation. It's real cool, and it lets you kind of do a lot with it.
Yeah, well, thank you.
I do have to ask you. So, Joshua, did you ever see, like, when you're a kid, the original Message Bible?
I never saw it as a kid. No, I've flipped through it a couple of times as an adult, but I haven't really dug into it.
Yeah, because it had some little cartoon things in it.
Oh, did it? Okay.
And so some of yours remind me of some of those that I remember from that. So yeah, I just was curious. So
Yeah.
we can find you on TikTok, and then you also have, looks like, a website, and on this website, I think this is the one I'm looking at now. Is it's got Blue J.N. Myers, and it's got a little Insta and a TikTok and a Facebook icon, and then it looks like that's the one that has all your links on it.
Yeah, that's the link site. That's the Beacons one. So on that site, I always put the comic on there, and there's a little blurb saying if there may be commentary, so go to the main site, because the main site's the first link on there, and that's where all the archives of all the comics I've been doing has been.
Okay.
And then that has all the links to everything else I'm at or anything that I've been a part of.
Yeah. And then we also found you on Instagram, and you've got a place there. And on Instagram, it looks like it's straight_n_narrow.
Yes.
Okay.
And yeah. So usernames don't let me put a plus sign in there, so I've had to do something different. So yeah, if that username's available, I'm in that username on a few places.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, and then we found you on Facebook, and so so it's pretty easy to find you there. And I suggest, if you are listening to this, go find him, follow him, and take a look at all these links. And he's kind of like us. It's like, where is he not? He's everywhere. So, and that does make it easy
for those who have ears to hear.
That's right.
Yep,
that's right.
Exactly.
And so then there is the website that it says the straight and narrow cfw.me. And so is that where your blog is?
That's like your comic page, right?
Yeah, that's the actual comic page. That's like a web comic hosting site,
Okay.
Okay.
and so it's already set up to host the comics in a fashion where you can click through them or scroll through them if you're on a mobile device. And so yeah, all the archives are there.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, good deal. And so now I think we are about. Oh, we're going to talk about books. So we are on a slide looking at books now. And so you've written some books, and I didn't even know this. I had started following you on TikTok, and I was like, I really like this guy. I told my kids, and they liked you too. I told Jake, and then
And I liked you too.
and then I'm like, he wrote books. What this guy's been doing all kinds of stuff. So
Yeah, you're
tell
kind
us
of
about
all
these
over the
books.
place. You got your hand in everything. It looks like.
Well, it's just what the Father has me doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, the books. Yeah, I have two of them. The first is the Torah portions. So after finishing the Torah portions one year, I put them all together into a book so that you can read them along with the Torah portions in a physical format. Um, and I plan on, so this year I'm doing the prophets portions. I did the gospel portions last year. I'll plan on sticking all of them in a book later, but that's on down the line. On down the line. But yeah, so the Torah portion ones are at least there and done. And then the second book that I released just before Sukkot last year is the what started it all for me on the comics, which is what I call the Church versus Bible series, and that's where I'm going through the things that I used to believe in church versus what I found the Bible says. And so they're comics that can stand alone by showing the differences. They give scriptures to show it, but also have commentary. So the Torah portions one is literally just comics, but the Church versus Bible one also has text to go along with it because it has all my commentary in there as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm excited. I want to get my hands on for sure the Torah portion one for both of them, and see what they're like. So um,
Yeah, I'm pretty excited to look through them also. So one thing that I started doing, it's real hard to keep at it. But when I started, we'd go through the Torah portions with the kids and stuff, and I would draw I'd try to get one picture that I could draw that would jar the kid's memory for a specific section. And I got so far with it, and then it's like I was saying, it's hard to keep doing it and pick. I wasn't doing Torah portions per se, but it was, here's an idea, here's a picture to go with it, and it really helps them uh, to be able to tell the story real easily. I can go through each picture with them, and they'll tell that part of the story, and then the next part, and the next part, just with little pictures. So it's amazing how much just a comic format works in teaching as a teaching tool.
Yeah, I can totally relate. I gave the Torah portions book to all my children, and anytime we get to some of the Torah portions, they'll bring up the pictures that I have in there. Like for example, the Jacob wrestling the angel. I drew that as kind of like a professional wrestling ring, and Jacob standing in the middle of it, saying, "I'm going to wrestle you tonight," and they'll be like, "Oh, hey, this is the part where they're in the wrestling ring." It's cute and it's fun.
yeah, that's awesome, and we have to do that with these stories. We got to make them come to life because they were just dudes like we are, and just normal people, and it helps make it come to life when you relate it to things like that. So
Something
that's
real,
great.
yeah.
Yeah, something they can
Yeah.
understand. So we also so you've designed some T-shirts as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's that's what I started doing shortly after the Father pulled me out of the corporate world. Is I started designing shirts, and I have several designs on there, all biblically based. What I've been focusing on with it recently is trying to put shirts out there with the comics. But the ones that you have on the slide, those are like some of the more popular ones that I have, my friends have. I see people wearing it around. Actually, at Sukkot, somebody that I hadn't met before had showed up with the second Peter 3:16 shirt. And I'm like, hey, that's my shirt. So it was really cool.
That's awesome. So
And he said, "No, this is my shirt," and you guys got into a
Yeah.
tussle. No,
Yeah.
yes, that's what the wrestling match really was.
yeah,
So I'm looking at the one I really like is it's not a Jewish thing; it's a Jesus thing. So,
Yeah. I
and
can't. I, sorry, I can't take credit for that one. That one is actually a friend of mine gave me the idea, and yeah, that is. I love that shirt. My wife has that one as well.
well, and while we're kind of on that topic, there, wouldn't you agree that that as on this shirt that you putting Jesus there? Sometimes people in our group are like they can get kind of crazy about not saying Yeshua, but I think that we can forget where we were before in our church walk, and that I think sometimes if we're not careful, we get in our little groups. It's just like engineers or any other special thing that you do. There's jargon
Hmm.
in your little group, and I think sometimes in the Torah group we start talking to each other maybe in these jargon terms, and if we have a new person or something, they don't know what we're talking about sometimes, and so it's good to use the common language and the words that people know.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, if we're trying to reach our friends and family, and to explain what we're doing, and we're using Hebrew and English mix.
Hebrew, hey, I'm gonna steal that.
If we're using that, they're not going. Yeah, we're losing the message on them. We're not speaking to them on their level, and it's not to say that they're at a lower level. It's just they don't know those words. We need to speak to them what they know, so that they can understand. Because if we're using like Hakadesh and you know
A Moedim, they're like a
Moedim, they're like, what
modem.
is that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Like, what are you talking
only if
about?
they're from the '90s. But
right.
Yeah, that's right. So no, I know we totally agree. And Jake and I have done some things with Torah apologetics, and that's one of the things that even little things like you have to start with a lot of people with, oh, you're trying to be Jewish, and and that's a great place to really explain and ask people then, okay, well, tell me what you think it means to be a Jew, and just have them give you a definition, and just kind of start there. And I also think it's important. I have a background in sales, and I talk to people a lot. And in sales, we learn to speak and pause and let the person talk and ask questions and make them think. And I think that so many times we get excited about Torah and whatever we're doing, and we just throw out all this information. And sometimes we throw out way too much information, and they're ready for milk in a baby step, and you just like went crazy on them.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I think it's real easy to go overboard, and it's real easy to want to ask a question and then give them the answer, but you can't really do that. You kind of have to let them think about it, or
mhm.
it's still only your information,
yeah,
right?
yeah, you're cohort or kind of getting an answer out of them that you want. And
Right.
so that old trick. But anyway, yeah, it's refreshing to hear you say that as well. Well, we will just go right into some of your work here. So the first one that we want to look at, and I recommend if you're not watching this in YouTube, it's going to be beneficial to see the cartoon. So this is Genesis 4:3-4, and this is a series that you have called The Law Before the Law. So, I love this one, and I wanted to start with this one because as a kid in Christianity, I can remember thinking to myself, huh, that's weird. How did he know? I mean, I don't know how old I was, but I was probably an adult really when I figured out that and it's like, wait a minute, the law hasn't been given yet.
This was like last week.
Yes, this is last week. But somehow he knows about the sacrifice thing, and there was a right way and a wrong way. How does he even know? And so that you kind of bring this up in this account, in this cartoon.
Yeah, and yeah, it's the law before the law. I wanted to point out, and it's a little mini series that I wanted to point out all the situations where we can see at least glimpses of the law before it was given on Sinai. And so, yes, definitely in this account, we can see whenever we read Genesis 4 that Abel brought the first fruits. He brought the best of his flock. It says the first fruits of his flock. And whereas Cain, it was just like Cain brought something. Cain was just like, yeah, this is whatever, here you go. And we can see that not just the physical law there, but the spirit of it too, because Cain, he's not showing reverence to God, and in his God's kind of comforting Cain, afterward. We kind of see that too. Like, look, you can do better. He's giving him a cheer up, talk there, saying you could do better. You're okay. Do better. Or else sin is going to come over you.
Yeah, and I love that part of the story too. This sin is crouching at your door. It's not that he
Yeah.
was sinning, it's he's leaving the door open to sin.
Right.
And it's the whole, like you were saying, it's the spirit of it is what he was always interested in, not the letter. And when I saw you had this series, The Law Before the Law, I thought, man, this is genius. It's one of those things that, maybe I had in the back of my mind or thought about, but never really, carried forth with, made good on the idea, or thought on it enough for it to be useful to me. But I thought this was a great series.
Yep.
Yeah, it's one I enjoy, and one I hopefully keep finding as I'm reading through, keep finding more and more that I can throw into it.
Yeah. Well, we'll move on to the next one that we found in the series, Genesis 6:19. No, 19 through 7:3. And so we're looking at Noah here. So tell us a little bit about this one.
Yeah, so we often think that the list of unclean and clean animals was only given to Moses, but here we have Noah. He's being told of the unclean animals to, depending on which translations you hold to, 2 of each or 2 pairs of each, and then of the clean animals, and it does say clean animals, 7 or 7 pairs of each. And it's just interesting to see that, hey, Noah even knew what a clean animal and an unclean animal was, and this is before the flood.
Yeah, and everyone remembered the Bible story, and they came 2 by 2.
Right.
Yeah.
That's because, and then in all the children's literature and stuff like that, that's how it's drawn. That's how it's presented.
Yeah. And we've
they
seen
never mentioned the 7 or the 7 pairs.
Right.
Again, however you want to.
Never. And you can probably go to any Bible class in Christianity in any church and pop in your head to a classroom and go, kids, they came 2 by 2. I mean, I would think that that would be kind of a unanimous answer. Just like in Texas, you can walk into any classroom and clap and say, the stars at night, and they'll finish big and bright. So
I'm glad I didn't walk into a lot of Texas classrooms.
You wouldn't know this because you're not.
I wouldn't understand. One thing too, I'll say before we move on from this one is actually I got 2 things. Sorry, I'm long-winded, but I always have a little joke I tell people with the whole animals going on the ark thing. So I always say, how many of each animal did Moses take on the ark? And then, of course, everyone says 2. And then you go, no, Noah took the ark, not Moses. And then the answer isn't 2 anyway. So I think that's a good one to kind of get people thinking. But, and then the other thing, you have a series, I don't think we necessarily bring it up in the slides here, but where you show this kind of peekaboo with the law kind of thing, where it applies, it doesn't, it applies, it doesn't. This back and forth thing.
That's in my biblical chart series. So,
yeah.
There's one I did recently. It was it was looking at dispensationalism and specifically this situation with with unclean and clean animals, and how if dispensationalism is correct, then animals were unclean in the garden. They were clean, and this is for eating purposes.
Right.
Clean after the flood, unclean after Sinai. Some animals after Sinai, clean again after Yeshua, and then if we look at prophecy, it'll be unclean again in the millennial reign.
Right.
So it's just like, why is it going back and forth like this? God's not a God of confusion.
Right. And yeah, that's one of the ones that's why I wanted to bring it up here with the Noah thing, because the clean and unclean foods is like a perfect place to see that mindset runs through dispensationalism.
Yeah. And that's the background I came from. So that's what I talk to a lot is showing that dispensational thought and how it really doesn't line up with the Bible as much as we used to think it did.
Right.
Yeah, that's good. All right, so we'll go on to the next one that we have here, and this is another one from Genesis 19. So tell us about this one about Genesis.
Yeah, so this is something that we were talking about at Bible study. I was like, oh, yeah, that's a really good point. I want to make a comment of that. But if we look at the instance of Sodom and Gomorrah and what all happened there, whenever God and the two angels show up to Abraham, he makes them unleavened bread. And then sundown happens. They go to Lot's house, and then Lot brings them inside, which is, one of the things for Passover. And he makes them unleavened bread, which of course you're making the first time you're making during Passover night. So it's definitely a reflection there that Sodom and Gomorrah probably happened on Passover, especially whenever we think of God doing, his doing things on his Moedim.
Right.
And then also in the prophets where it talks about this is a type of Sodom and Egypt. And what happens in Egypt? Well, there's Passover and an Exodus out of it. What happens in Sodom? There's an Exodus out of it. So it kind of leads to maybe this was a Passover.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, and it's lines up because it's Lot's salvation here, if you will. It's almost the same story, and once again, there's a lot of the whole story is cyclical, and we see these patterns, and this is part of that pattern. That's a good observation.
Well, will be again, nothing new under the sun.
Right. That's right. Yep. So that makes a lot of sense. And then we'll move on to, we've got another Genesis one. This is Genesis 31, 34 through 35.
So yeah, this one is Rachel and taking the household idols from Laban's house. And whenever Laban's going through all the stuff and trying to find them, she's like, "Hey, I'm unclean. I'm doing my women's period right now," and he's totally okay with not checking where she hid the idols underneath her. And it just shows that those laws that give about the women's menstruation period in Torah, that even here we have Laban, who's related to Abraham, who comes from the same line that Shem did. That God's passing down these laws through everybody, and he's even aware of them to know not go near Rachel while she's on this women's cycle thing.
Yeah, no, that's a great point for sure. So, and it's like one of the it seems like an age old thing right there. So, but I can see how totally in this story, when you put flesh on it and think about it from his perspective, he's like, "Oh, okay, yep, nope, don't say anything else. I'm good. Yep,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
just leave you alone." Because no man wants to have this discussion with a young lady.
Not even then.
No.
Especially with your daughter.
Yes. Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, that's good. All right, so moving on, there's one about Genesis 38.
Yeah. So the instance where Tamar was marrying Judah's sons, and the first son was, God kills, and then the second son was given to Tamar to produce offspring for the first son, and he doesn't, and he gets killed for that. And then he doesn't give his third son, Shelah, he doesn't give his third son to her, and says, you need to wait until he gets older. But then, of course, he never gives her to him. And so she goes and, acts like a woman of the night. I don't know how PG we want to be here, but acts like a woman of the night. And then Judah does things with her to produce the offspring that his sons never did. And whenever they try to bring her out to say that she's the one in sin, she proves that, no, you're the one that did this to me. And he's like, she's more righteous than I am, because she's the one that followed through with God's command of producing the offspring that should have happened from the first son.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. And, I like too that you put the idea across and not necessarily word for word. And then, it has a bit of a humor to it, which I like. And I like too that you put the before Torah account and then you put where it is in the Torah.
Yeah. Yeah, I always try to, if I can, try to put humor in all of it. I mean, there's definitely some situations that there's no humor to be found. I mean,
Right.
it's either so grim or so serious that it's just like, okay, we can't make light of the situation. But yeah, this one, I mean, the whole Judah, like, yeah, come back later. Yeah, that's it. Like totally, I'm not going to do this, but yeah, you come back later. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. And what I've always found kind of interesting too about the story is, if you put this in modern terms, I like to think about them sometimes. And what does this look like today? And what I say is, he basically had his wallet stolen and his credit cards and his car keys.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the things she took with him. Basically, she took his his authority and the signet ring, and
His identity.
Yeah, stole his identity. It was a very powerful thing, and and if you don't think about ancient times very much, you're just like, oh, whatever, you got this stick, and it just doesn't quite translate. You have to think about it a little bit and just realize how devastating, when he got back and realized, he's like, oh my goodness, I have messed up, because he knew this was going to come back. People know who he is. So,
Yeah, no, I agree.
That's a good one. And so we'll move to the next one. And this one is Genesis 39, 7-9.
Yeah, so this is the account where Joseph is confronted by Potiphar's wife, and Joseph's like, no, I can't sin against God. Where does God say that you can't have somebody else's wife except in the Torah and in the law later on? And so here we see Joseph saying specifically, if he's going to sin against God, he also says against his master too. But I mean, first and foremost, what he's concerned with is sinning against God. And yeah, we only learned that's a sin by, again, the law, like Paul talks about.
Yeah. No, that's good.
So do you find it hard to explain to people that the law didn't start at Sinai?
I have. I've actually, because I think I posted all these on TikTok, and that's where I really get the most interactions. I've had a few interactions on Facebook and some other social media sites, but I get the most on TikTok. It's more active there. But yeah, on a few of these, I've had people come up and say, well, no, that's like, for instance, on this one in particular, they're like, no, that just shows that morality has always been. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the law. It's like, well,
where does morality come from?
Morality. Yeah, the law shows us morality, and it just comes from the whole, again, dispensational view of that there's three different laws. You got your moral, your civil, and your judicial, I believe, or ceremonial. Ceremonial. And speaking of that, that was one comment I made to somebody. It's interesting because what is being called ceremonial, if we look at what most people believe are ceremonial, all of those are on worshiping God. And this is how we love God, is a ceremonial. And dispensationalists say that we don't do that anymore. So all the things of, hey, this is how you love me, and so it's like, yeah, we don't do that no more.
I think I've been, kind of been thinking on that track too, how it's this, they'll say that there's two laws now, love God and love your neighbor, but in reality there's one law that's followed through on, and it's love your neighbor. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, no, I totally agree. That's the one that everybody seems to harp on too, is loving your neighbor. That's all we have to do now, is love your neighbor. It's like, no, we're still supposed to love God, and God has a love language, and He's told us what it is. This is how we come to Him.
Yeah, and it's also part of, Jake and I have done a lot of stuff with the wedding, and so the people in my group sometimes are like, "Oh my gosh, she's going to talk about the wedding again," and because I see it everywhere. And we talked to Michael Oman, and have you ever heard of Michael Oman?
I have not.
And what's the YouTube?
His YouTube is Olive Branch Fellowship. You got to check it out.
Okay.
It's real good.
So he
Yeah,
has
check it out.
he has a 4-part teaching about the wedding, and so he goes into great detail. And once you see the wedding,
You can't
then
not
you're
see
like,
it. Yeah,
oh
it's
my
everywhere.
goodness, it is everywhere. And so I've always heard that the Bible's this love story, and so I learned that in regular church, and they're right, it is. And it's this. It's a wedding. It's that kind of relationship, and you do for your spouse, not because you have to earn their love, but because you want to maintain this relationship, and it's that kind of thing. And that's what sometimes people have a hard time, I think, wrapping their mind around. And but this wedding business, it basically starts with Adam and Eve getting married, in essence, in the garden under a sukkah, which is the garden.
The
And
firmament, right?
Yep. And then Moses, with the people, they basically remarry. And while they're getting married, during the ceremony, the bride is on the floor whoring with other lovers, basically at the golden calf. So, and then the whole thing with grinding the golden calf and making them drink the water, it's the curse of the bitter waters, where the jealous husband had to, if
you drink the bitter water and your abdomen swells and your thigh
you
rocks.
take her to the priest, and and then in essence you fast forward to Yeshua on the cross, and he basically, when he prays that may this cup pass before me, he's praying that that cup of bitter waters would pass, because he knew he was about to drink it, and that curse was going to fall on him. Which is it's pretty amazing, pretty crazy.
Yeah, and that goes into the next comic also, because that's exactly what that one's about is those bitter waters.
So that for Luke, so you've got Luke 2:21 through 24, and Exodus 13:2, and Leviticus 12.
Oh no, I'm skipping ahead. I am sorry.
Yep. Sorry.
Well,
we can go to the next one. So let's talk about that one since we're there.
Yeah, Exodus 32.
I'm sorry. Exodus 32. Yeah, I'm sorry.
That was my fault. I put them in the wrong order.
Oh, it's all good. But so we see in Exodus 32 that doing exactly that, Moses after the golden calf is making them drink the bitter waters, and we see they afterward the command to go kill everybody that their stomach has swelled and their thighs wasted away. And that's, they can't get away because, their legs aren't working. But,
right.
the law doesn't happen for that until Numbers 5. We don't hear what that is happening about in Exodus 32. It's not explained until Numbers 5. So again, the law happening before. And then, you explained perfectly with Yeshua on the cross. Same thing, his thigh wastes away after he takes that bitter water, the cup that he took for us, and passes soon afterward.
And that brings up a good point too. In my group is, they've heard me say this a million times, but that whole idea of of the cup, and my question, I think that this is, when we talk to people, especially people who maybe are coming from a church background, this is a nugget of truth that we can drop. And I think that sometimes is our angle. Jake and I have been on this Torah apologetics kick for a while, but I think maybe trying to figure out how we can drop nuggets of truth like this and connect dots for people. Sometimes that's what we need to do, because we instead of getting in arguments with them, and especially our loved ones and people in our families that maybe aren't on the same page, if you can just bring them to some things like that and connect some pieces and explain, and that, you can even ask them, so tell me, why did Yeshua, or why did Jesus have to die on the cross? And a lot of times people will give you some pat answer that they've heard, but it doesn't really mean a whole lot. And if you can explain something like that to them, they're like, oh wow.
Yeah, some of those things that you learn along the way, you're like, wow, that's real neat. And it, other people think it's neat also.
Yeah.
The problem is we think everything is neat once we first get into this. We're like, have everything. You got to leave your neat little nuggets. Don't dump your whole bag of seed.
Mm-hmm.
Just, that's nothing grows that way.
That's right.
Yeah,
sprinkle it.
Yeah, a few at a time. Yeah, exactly. I know whenever I first came into the knowledge and I was doing exactly that. I found everything neat, and so I wanted to tell everybody everything. And I had people telling me, quit telling me this stuff. I don't want to go to hell. It's just like, okay, I learned from that. Okay, I need to tone it down, tone it back.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even though it's just, hey, this is real neat that I found, and I want to tell you about it, people take it as like an attack. It's like,
Yeah.
no, I just want to tell you this because it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, good. And we'll go to with the one we just talked about, Luke 2:21-24. And so tell us a little bit about this one.
Yeah, so this is the law in the New Testament.
This is the law in the New Testament. So yeah, that's part of the series. I have law in the New Testament as well, just to show that the law was still standing in the New Testament. This one happens before Yeshua, but it's still interesting to see. And it's where when Joseph and Mary go up to the temple to present the turtle doves for Mary's purification, again according to the Mosaic law. And what's interesting in this Luke account as well is it calls it the law of the Lord. And because we often hear, people try to say, well, Mosaic law, that doesn't matter. That's Moses' law. And it's like, well, no, even Luke tells us this is God's law.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and a lot of people do say that. That's good.
I like this as an aside. Here are the turtle doves. Oh yeah, also here are the turtle doves.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
And then we did that one. So,
and I think that was the ones we had handpicked. So, well, is there anything that else that we missed that you want to get out there? You probably should tell us how to find you again one more time, and anything else you want to say?
Sure. Yeah. The easiest way to find me is beacons.ai and then /JNMYERS. And that has all my links. And if you're on any of the major social medias, you can look for the Straight and Narrow, and I post to all those as well. I post the comics there, and also have links to go back to the main site, so you can find it through there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the only thing that I would add is, the comics. I have several different series. Y'all brought out the law one, which is a great series, a little mini series. My main series on there, like I said, the Church versus Bible, where I had the book. But that's one of the main ones. That's the one that started it all. Looking at my different church backgrounds and comparing it to the Bible. As the Torah Scrolls is probably my favorite, to where I'm taking each chapter of the Bible, and I definitely can I've thrown a lot of humor in that one, and make it kind of a quote unquote Sunday comic. So it has 5 panes to it, and it's just real fun for me. And then of course the portions is the other one that are my major ones. And I have several miniseries, just whatever the Father is putting on my heart. I'll go out there. Like I have a series for the Sabbath and defending it, and I can't remember the other miniseries now, but there's several. Oh, the biblical charts that we were talking about. I have some of those.
Yeah.
Again, going back to my analytical background, I did a lot of flow charts whenever I was in my corporate world, and so I've kind of taken that and brought it into the comics here.
Yeah. Oh, one thing that you've touched on a little bit, but maybe elaborate just a little bit on is so how did you what kind of brought you into the light of Torah?
Yeah, so it was about the end of 2016. We were at a typical Sunday church, and our pastor did a sermon on the names of God. He handed out these sheets that had all the different names that you can find in the Bible. He gets down to Adonai, and he says, anytime you see the Lord in the Bible, this is the name. I tuned out the rest of that sermon. I focused on Adonai. I was like, this is your name? How can I be, walking with you for so long? Because, I'm like 36 at the time, and I had been a Christian, since I was like 10. How have I never heard your name? And that's all I focused on. And I started looking into it. I got a Bible that said Adonai. I started digging deeper into the Bible because that really showed me that I didn't really know the Bible as well as I did. And of course, I learned a few months later that now I'm just saying the Lord in Hebrew. but it was still something that got me started to dig deeper. And really, after that kicking point, coming across a sermon that, the guy, and this is a totally different person, but coming across a sermon where they're like, the Sabbath is a blessing to us and you should really keep it. And we have, I mentioned it, the first 4 kids, 2 of them deaf. So we were in therapy all week because, trying to get them to adjust to being able to speak, clearly and what have you. Right. And I was working all the time. And so having a day off really sounded nice, but also sounded impossible because the weekends were our days to, either do stuff as a family or do grocery shopping and get, various other tasks done. But we decided, hey, Sabbath sounds really cool. We want to do this. And so we planned it for a month later. And we were able to do it. And since then, we haven't broken a Sabbath. We've been able to get more done in 6 days than we ever did in 7 before. And it's been a continued blessing for our family. It's something that through keeping it, we've been able to study more. And through studying more, we've been able to incorporate even more stuff.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot. I mean, that happened with us. It was Sabbath was kind of the first one. I think it's easy to start with that one because it's one of the 10, And you're like, well, up until I became Torah observant, the church thought the 10 Commandments still stood. And then you're like, start bringing that up to people, and they're like, what do you mean 10 Commandments? There's only 2 commandments now.
Yeah.
And that's one that's kind of confused me, is because I always grew up knowing that the 10 Commandments still stood.
Right.
And I always thought the Sabbath was Sunday. And that's one of the things I always tell people too, that I always think was funny, is not 2-3 months before we started keeping the Sabbath and doing it Friday night to Saturday night. I was listening to a podcast, and I don't remember what the podcast was or why I chose it, but I was listening to it, and the gentleman on there was talking about how he was on a flight. He was all excited because sundown was coming, which meant Sabbath is coming. And some dude next to him says the same thing, and he's like all excited because now he's next to another Sabbath keeper. And then they mentioned that it was Friday night, and I'm like, I thought to myself, idiot, the Sabbath is Sunday, and I turned it off. And like I said, this was like, 2 months before, 2-3 months before, God was like, no, it's this day, and you're going to start keeping it now.
Wow.
Yeah. That's awesome. And we talked before when we were doing our just a preview interview before we recorded this. We talked about if she's listening, Walk Like the Hebrew podcast. I think you'd be a great person to have on her show, and she likes to gather up people's Torah stories and how you came into Torah, and hope she listens to this, or if you know her, please pass this on to her, and maybe she can reach out to Joshua, and he can be on her channel as well. So we want to help Joshua get the word out. He's very talented and a man of many hats here, and we just want to encourage him. And shirts. We want to encourage him to continue to do what he's doing. Our community needs this kind of thing, and we just want to see him have success. And we really appreciate you coming on, Joshua, and spending some time with us today. And so, Jake, you got anything else?
No, it was great getting to talk to you a little bit and have you on the program here, and get to see, share some of your comics with the whole world.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. So, and we encourage all of our listeners out there to go check out his websites. Google his name. Google the Straight Plus Narrow, and you'll find him. He's once again, it's Joshua Myers, and just go check out some of his things. Please support him. And this is Matt and Jake with Sabbath Lounge. We do appreciate any likes, comments, subscribe, share this with people. But this is Matt and Jake
signing off.